Now, let's get started with our story. First of all, just this is Emperor um, Augustus, the man who basically shaped and transformed the Roman politics and the Roman Empire for the rest of its history. He also reshaped Rome. I really particularly like this portrait, which is in the British Museum in London, because it's really a lifelike portrait of the emperor with his eyes on us. So those is a little bit spooky, and it's a beautiful bronze head. And Augustus, in reshaping the Roman Empire, the Roman society, also rebuilt and redesigned large parts of it. If you visit the Roman Forum, if you've seen the monuments of Rome, you might have heard that many of these buildings were either built or rebuilt at the time of Augustus. And anyway, he laid on the city his own idea of a city that still mostly built of bricks and local sandstone and of wood and clay roofs. He turned it into a city of marble. This area is right here today. I'll be swapping now to Google Maps. I'll take off the labels. So this area where the Pantheon is, and Piazza Navona, you might recognize some of these locations. It's called the Campo Marzio. It was a mostly marshy area between the area with the Forum here, down here, where now is Piazza Venezia with the Vittoriano, and basically the River Tiber. That, as you can see, coming up from the north, it bends at this point and makes a large curve. Now, this area was subject to a lot of floods, and it was outside of the city walls at the time of Augustus. It was a large field with basically that for a time was used also for military camping and military exercises. This long street, which is now known as Via del Corso, which is in its Italian name, it's actually laid on the same path of the ancient Via Flaminia, which still goes all the way up north and then east. It reaches the Emilia Romagna, and passing through Umbria. You could still do the modern Via. It's very similar to the ancient one, and basically we have this idea that this was one of the main ways of accessing the city. So Emperor Augustus reshaped that part because it was the first thing that most people saw when they entered, by building a number of strategically displayed buildings. The Mausoleum of Augustus, his own tomb, and which was basically a way to show to the city that he saw his end and his life in Rome, and the Arapacis, which was built halfway on the Via Flaminia, which is now been rebuilt. It was rebuilt 100 years ago next to the Mausoleum Augusti. The mausoleum has been open, it just opened 2 weeks ago. The March the 1st to the public after 15 years being under restoration. Sadly, it has to shut down again, but it will be one of the things to see if you're interested in the Roman Empire and Augustus when you come back to Rome. And of course, there was also a sundial, and the sundial is something that the Romans became kind of obsessed at some point with this idea. There were several in Rome. Many of them didn't work well in Rome, so because they were made for other cities or other parts from Sicily or from other parts of the Roman Empire. And then right at the bottom, where the aqueduct that was as well built at the time of Augustus, the Aqua Virgo, which is the one who fed most of this area, led to the Septa Iulia, which were a large meeting courtyard, and next the Pantheon. The first Pantheon was built by Emperor Augustus in 27 BC. So this is how the Roman Empire looked at the time of Augustus. The yellow part, it's the part that the provinces, the parts of that belong to the Roman Empire at the time where Emperor Augustus took power. In 31st BC, he defeated his rival Mark Antony, which had this idea to move down to Egypt, and he was in love with Cleopatra, Cleo, and basically they were having this idea that the Roman Empire should look east, while Caesar, like his father, like Augustus, like his adopted father Julius Caesar, had saw the future in the empire mostly in the conquest of the the northern provinces, which were for him basically easier to be conquered. Anyway, the green parts and also the pink part, they do represent all the expansion. So you can see that Augustus nearly doubled the size of the Roman Empire by submitting a large part of lands that were somehow related with Rome, but were not conquered yet. And of course, to celebrate this expansion and the very beginning, basically, of the Roman Empire as we intend it, and the beginning of almost of about 500 years of Roman Empire, he also built a number of temples, a number of buildings to celebrate all this power. This is another portrait of the emperor, a less spooky one, traditionally in marble and all white. I'm just now going to show you a detailed map. Basically, the area we're talking about is the area top left nearby the river, where you can see a number of buildings, including thermobaths that were built by Agrippa. Agrippa was Emperor Augustus' best friend. It was the head in chief of his army, and it became also one of the men who was designated to be his successor. Unfortunately, Agrippa died before this could happen. By the meanwhile, Augustus had already changed his mind. He wanted probably Marcellus to become his successor, but Marcellus died young. Anyway, in 27 BC, Agrippa was consul of Rome, which was the yearly elected governors. Every year, the Romans elected two kind of city governors. They were the equivalent of the city major, and it was a very important role because, of course, they were in charge of the life of the capital. At the same time, it was a great honor because they get to give the name to that year. So it basically that's one of the beginning of the forms of the calendar of the Romans. You could see in this map, this is a model which is in the Arapaces, this museum that celebrates the Emperor Augustus and the altar of peace, which was built in 14 BC. And on the left, you could see the Septa Iulia, this kind of white courtyard, and next to it, the sheer size of the Pantheon. Now, let's kind of immerse ourselves in the Pantheon with a drone flying through the Pantheon. So let's this was shot right at the beginning of the lockdown last year, when Italy in March entered a full lockdown, which lasted for like over 2 months. And of course, this is a Baroque fountain right in front of the obelisk in front of the Pantheon, and this is the Pantheon today. You can see today is of scale compared to everything that is around, but all the buildings around were all built much later. The Pantheon had a courtyard outside, thermobaths at the back. This is the magnificent dome, which is one of the largest, is the largest domes that the Romans ever built, and was the largest dome in the world right until the end of 19th century, when larger one was built. First one, I think, was in Oxford. Even the Brunelleschi dome, the diameter is a little narrower if you consider the base rather than the angles. And the angles is widely larger. I'm not sharing the screen, am I not? Let me just see. Can you see my screen? Okay, can you see the screen now? Ok, un attimo solo. Can you see the screen? I might. Okay. Now you see the screen, yes? Yes, I see the screen. Sorry, there is a delay in the video. Let's just quickly recap. Sorry about that. That's the screen. Let me just. Okay, sorry about that. So that's the portrait of Augustus, which is in the British Museum. I'll just do a quick recap. Sorry about that. This is the area of the Campus Martius, basically the area where Augustus mostly created a number of monuments which were related with his power. And then, of course, this is the Roman Empire, how it was just in 31st BC and then over the next 45 years. Emperor Augustus had a long empire, died in 14 AD, so he ruled for nearly 50 years, and that's the Emperor marble portrait. Let's go ahead and let's basically, so this is basically this kind of wedding cake like building with this part looks really much like this is basically the mausoleum of Augustus. Okay, let's get to the drone again, which is here, and let's replay it again. As I said, this drone video was filmed right at the beginning of the first lockdown in April last year, and you can actually see the Pantheon as it's basically so beautiful, and it is quite larger than the original, that everything that surrounds it, and you can see the dome, which is, as well as I said, was the largest dome the Romans built, 43 meters, 20 meters wide. It's over 120 feet wide, and the building is as tall as well. And you can see the beautiful pronaos, and we're going to discover now basically the details and some of the hidden aspects of the Pantheon, including especially the part inside. Inside there are two different museums, not currently open to the public. I'm going to show you one of them, which is quite interesting. And let's go back to the presentation. I'll be using also a number of different medias. The Pantheon was dedicated not to one deity, but to the very idea of the Roman religion. The Pantheon means all the gods, and so was also the most sacred place. This is the portrait of Emperor Hadrian, about 150 years after Augustus. Hadrian was a great and highly cultivated emperor who basically rebuilt and redesigned the many monuments in Rome, including the Pantheon, which was highly restored or probably completely rebuilt by Emperor Hadrian. If we look at the facade of the Pantheon, we can actually go here. I'll be using a number of 3D pictures and a number of different images. When we are in the square, Piazza della Rotonda, as it's called today, you see these large letters. First of all, these letters are not the original ones. They have the original shape, but this was stripped off long ago, and they were redone maybe in the 1930s, at the beginning of the 20th century. And they were grooves though, so they will be able to replace them. There are other inscriptions, you can't see them in the picture, but there are several inscriptions that reflect different restoration. And then at the top, in the part of the triangle at the top, the tympan on the top, basically these holes, they would have been bas relief, them hooked with a number of nails on the top. The inscription reads, M. Agrippa LF cos tertium facies. Marco Agrippa, Lucius Filius, cos tertium fecit. So it's dedicated to Agrippa, who in 27 BC built the original Pantheon. But in the 19th century, studying the structure of the Pantheon, an architect called Beltrami found some bricks in a part that was believed to be structurally needed for the building to be supported. A number of clay bricks with seals and stamps dating back to the time of Hadrian. And he believed that those bricks could not be a restoration or a later repair, but they were in parts that they must have been put in place where the building was actually built. And I'm going to explore now the structure of the building. It's quite a complex one. And so they redated the monument to the time of Hadrian. We know that Hadrian restored that, but at that time they actually believed that the Pantheon built by Emperor Augustus must have been different than the one that we look today. And so Hadrian rebuilt in a larger scale with a giant dome and with that kind of large part. The area was not chosen by chance. The Pantheon of Augustus was built in a place where they believed that the king Romulus, the mythical founder of Rome, had been transformed into a god and ascended to the sky during a storm, deified, created into a god by the god Mars. You can see that the Pantheon has 8 columns on the facade and 8 more at the back. The first line, they are of gray granite, the one at the back of pink granite, except the first one on the left here, which is a replacement. It's a little shorter and thinner than the others, and this was replaced at some point because the original either collapsed or faded, or maybe, according to the historian Donofrio, Cesare Donofrio, which is that died a few years ago. I used to know him. He used to come to the Pantheon when I was working there every now and then. He had a library not far. It was one of the men who had one of the deepest knowledge of the facts, and especially the minor history of Rome. He was convinced that that column was sent at some point to Constantinople during the end of the Roman Empire, in the late Empire, or soon after the late Empire. But it was an interesting kind of idea. Anyway, this one has been replaced then later on, and when the Pantheon was then during the Middle Age overbuilt, there were a number of other buildings around that partially blocked even the pronaos, even the part inside. The columns are monolithic one. They are one piece. They are 12.5 meters tall. They are on average about 17 tons of weight each. They were shipped all the way from Egypt to Rome. So, because of course granite, this is the Egyptian granite. How did they do that? Well, as I always say, very carefully. I mean, they put them on large boats. Roman boats had a tonnage that went from at least 70 tons up to 350 tons. So 3 or 4 of them could have fit in a large, on one of these large Roman ships at the time of the empire. Anyway, the building is impressive, and it's really, really large. It's of the scale that it was meant to impress. Even more at the time when it was built, because this was on a high podium. There were steps to access the structure. Now, if we go and see the cross section of the structure, there is a pronao here. The figures that drawn here are not to scale because the columns are even higher. And then there is this complex roofing system. I will be talking about that later. And then The foundation are not represented here. Anyway, there is a deep and giant ring of concrete right beneath that supports all the weight of the structure. Remember that this has been in a marshy area. There's no rock underneath. It's just the thousands and millions of years of basically deposits from the river. And then the walls, they are about 6 meters thick, which is about 18 feet thick. And as you go on the top, the structure gets thinner and thinner. So basically, the Pantheon has a dome that is designed to support the higher pressure. The higher you go, the more the structure, the walls tend to bend and to collapse on themselves. The building was designed, as many Roman buildings, according to a very precise mathematical proportion. In fact, the dome is 43 meters wide, just over 120 feet wide, and it's the width is the same as the height. So basically, inside we can inscribe a perfect sphere. Now, this had a very strong symbolical, philosophical, ideological meaning, because, of course, what is spherical? Well, of course, the planets, but also in the ancient times, they believed that the universe was spherical. And there is a common mistake that the Romans or the ancients believed that the earth was flat, or where they weren't sure. No, they did not know that the earth was round, and they believed you couldn't go around for a number of reasons, but they did know that it was round. They even measured in the 5th century BC the width of the earth with a certain level of precision. They also knew that the planets were round, because if you look up, you can just see, and they even calculated basically with the very much accuracy also all the phases of the planets and the eclipses and all that kind of stuff. So they knew astronomy very well. So that is the width of the sphere inside of the structure. And so you can see that everything is designed according to a precise mathematical proportion. If we inscribe a square within the width of the circle of the dome, we have basically the half of the same distance that goes from the square itself to the pronoun. So everything was designed and made according to a very precise mathematical proportion, and that's why it's so pleasing to look at it. They discovered that if you design things precisely geometrically in a very accurate way, then you basically have this precision. And the Pantheon, like the Orologium Augusti, like the many sundials, was also used as a system to measure and check the calendar and the precession of the equinox. It is basically, there are two phenomena which are still can still be observed today. One is the fact that the instead of having, like in the sundial, the sun casting a shadow on the floor, and you can just mark. In this case, there is a rays of light that enter from the ceiling and marks, of course, the winter solstice and the equinox and the other parts. Of course, in the equinox is right at the center, and then in the summer solstice, it basically comes down halfway on the floor. But there's also two other phenomena which are really, really interesting, and especially the fact that the Pantheon enlights the archway above the door perfectly on the birthday of Rome. The Dies Natalis meant the creation of the city of Rome, the 21st of April, which was done to a level of precision which is really impressive. Now, last year, one of the good things of the lockdown was that the Pantheon was closed and empty, so they could film this. This has been made by the the Italian Ministry of Culture. That 753 BC is the anniversary of the foundation of Rome, the year of the foundation of Rome. 753 BC, 21st of April, which is the birthday of Rome. And this video has been made to show that the light just goes straight onto lighting up those marble arch right above, and it lights perfectly, and then you can see perfectly the door. So it's right center on the door, which is something really, 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 really unique. So it just at noon, which is because of the daylight saving, it's one. It just stops right down at the center on the door, and which is really, 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 really interesting. So it goes down, and then it goes down. It's as low as it gets, and then it goes up again. So it's really, really interesting, because it could have been used to check, of course, if the calendar was up to date. And this is the cross section of the structure. So the walls are full of hollow spaces, and in some of these hollow spaces there are staircases, there are rooms, there's a number of things. Of course, none of this is accessible to the public, but I will take you there with the digital presentation shortly to show you a small museum. And this is how it could have looked like. So I told you that the letters have been replaced. When Hadrian rebuilt the Pantheon, he wanted the letters of Agrippa be put back there. If he completely rebuilt that, as the archaeologists believe, there would have been statues in the large niches at the entrance and statues inside of gods. They're all gone, so we don't really know exactly what was there, if there was a statue of Caesar or what other statues there were there. Anyway, there are inside the structure seven main chapels and 8 smaller shrines. So probably for comparison, this would have been like how the Pantheon would have looked like. It's something like this. We can enter here using a 3D model, and so you can see the structure is pretty much unchanged. The pattern of the floor and the colors, these alternatives of circles and squares also is a symbolism of, the earth and the skies. And then you can see the little shrines where there would have been a statue of deities and the large shape. Now, the Pantheon was in use for a few hundred years. In 395 AD, Emperor Theodoricus declared the Christianism the only religion allowed in the empire. The Colosseum, the Pantheon was closed, and as you can see, the oculus, the hole at the top, and basically the beautiful large space. So the Pantheon was one of its kind because people were allowed inside. The surface is about 2,000 square meters. On the one roof, it's a pretty remarkable large room, and they had ceremonies and sacrifices and other rites inside. As I said, at the end of the 4th century, creationism was the only religion allowed in the Roman Empire. So all the pagans were banned, the statues were destroyed, and in some parts of the empire, the pagans were even persecuted. And the Colosseum, the Pantheon, was basically shut and not accessible for quite a long time. In 609 AD, the Emperor Augustus, which was the emperor of Byzantium, after the Byzantine had reclaimed part of central Italy, establishing a temporary rule in central Italy, reclaiming the ancient capital of Rome, from the 6th till the 8th century AD. So there was this small part called Esarcato, and he dedicated the Pantheon again as a church. It was given to the Pope Bonifacius IV, the Pope at that time, the Bishop of Rome, who transformed that into a church. According to a legend, they had to turn it into a church by basically making sure that all the pagan gods and all these pagan elements were gone. And then to do that, to make sure, they buried 28 boxes of bones and remains of martyrs from the catacombs, of which Rome had plenty. In Rome, there are about 60 catacombs. By then, they started to abandon the catacombs because we're mostly outside the city, were unsafe, and so they started to be abandoned back then. So many remains of saints were moved from the outskirts of Rome into the churches inside of Rome. And so to do that, because they didn't have the kind of workforce, they actually put some gold coins inside these boxes, and telling people that whatever they would have maybe emptied those boxes under the altar of the Pantheon, that they would have basically had the chance to be able to take those coins with them. Of course, this is one of many stories, and one of the stories I let it being told to you by Dan Brown with this Angels and Demons. Now, when I worked at the Pantheon from 1999, so over the 20 years ago, till 2007, and 2007, 2008, and then after that I resigned, and I was working there as a museum assistant, so basically I was giving tours. And I remember the early 2000 people coming asking about this book. I had no clue, and then I read it, and it's very clever. It's a story that, you know, the cardinals get kidnapped, there's a conspiracy inside the church, and then they're looking for these kidnapped cardinals around Rome. The protagonist is Robert Langdon. Here you will see
well, maybe we're not getting along.
Tom Hanks. Let's listen what they have to say, and then we'll comment on that. So they are just entering the Pantheon. They're looking for clues. They're pretending to have been a couple.
Nervous newlywed.
And it is. This is an entirely digital copy. It wasn't filmed in the Pantheon.
That could be the demon's hole in the bone.
Why are the tombs at an angle?
They're facing east to worship the rising sun.
But this is a Christian church.
New religions often adopt the existing customs and holidays to make conversion less of a shock. Like the 25th of December, it's the pagan celebration of the unconquered sun and also makes a handy date for the birth of Christ. Let's check the recesses. I'll go to the right. I'll meet you in 180 degrees.
Follow me, please. Now, the Pantheon, which means temple of all gods, was originally built as a temple to all the gods of ancient Rome in 27 BC. Although the design of the building is usually credited to Apollodorus of Damascus. Some believe that
Robert! Robert! It's Raphael's tomb, but it's the wrong one.
What are you talking about?
It was moved here in 1759, a century after the Agrippa was published. Where was he originally buried?
Urbino, I think. Santi's earthly tomb. What could it possibly be? Santi's earthly tomb. Damn it! Santi's tomb. It must mean a chapel that he built. He's not buried in it. He designed it. The demon's hole. It's not an oculus. It's an undercroft. It's a crypt.
Are there any questions?
Yes. Yes. Did Raphael Santi ever design a chapel with an ossuary annex and an angel figure commissioned by the Catholic Church?
I'm sorry, I can only think of one.
One is good.
And then, of course, they're looking for the one place where the cardinals is kidnapped. I really like the way that Dan Brown, although most of it is just made up, he basically is able to create this you know, kind of very intriguing thriller, just using basically historical episodes. The Pantheon is real. Most of the things that he says is real. It's just that, for example, Raphael was buried at the Pantheon when he died. It wasn't moved there in the 18th century, as it says there. So this is how the Pantheon would look like, and probably there wasn't illegal. There was probably kind of a more like a frieze, a metal frieze that was then stripped off, leaving hundreds of holes on the tympan. And this is the cross section. You could see the columns, the statues, the quality and the level, all marbles. This was a monument to state the fact that Augustus wanted to and later also similar motivations were the ones by Hadrian, recreate a place of worship to reconnect the ancient deities with the myth of the foundation of Rome, to create a story. We always are told in school and university that the winners, they write the story. They are the ones who tell the story, history. They are the ones who, you know, describe history. So only the winners do that and not the losers, which is somehow is true for example, for the Romans who conquered the barbarians. We didn't have accounts of the wars, for example, the wars of Caesar written by the barbarians. But for most of history, that is not true, because we also had accounts written by the people who were defeated or conquered. But I always thought that is not the point. The point is that very often the people who wins is the people who have the best story to tell, who have the best vision, who have the grandest way to propose themselves as the ones that will do the best for the people, and hence they get support of the people. And Augustus surely believed in that. In fact, invest so much in buildings, but also in poets, in artists who could sing whatever was his history, his background, and also his vision of the future. The vision was that he could bring back the original wealth and richness and the moral qualities that made Rome great. So his whole idea, the idea of rebuilding this Pantheon, this temple dedicated to all the gods in such a beautiful shape and with all marbles and statues, it was the idea that he wanted to basically keep with that promise, with this idea to making Rome great. And this is some of the digital pictures that basically represent how the Pantheon was like, and you can see here. And then again, the rays of light basically coming from the oculus. The oculus is about 9 meters wide, so it's again about 30 feet wide, and I'm sorry, 18 feet wide, and it's more or less as big as a bus, and it's wide open. Hence, it rains inside. There is a sort of effect. Sometimes outside you won't see the rain, but it rains in. There's a drainage system with a number of holes that collect the waters. Of course, the thick marble is not, or the floor is not affected. This is 18th century painting, one of the visitors climbing on the dome on the oculus. Dan Brown wrote that the oculus was the demon's hole. In the Middle Ages, there was this legend that when the Pantheon was transformed from monument, from a pagan temple into a church, the devil was inside locked up, and then basically when they turned into a church with this bone of martyrs, he escaped through the roof, making a hole. Of course, in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance still, they couldn't figure out why they left a hole open, and it's still a good question today. Why did they left a hole open? And the reason for that is that the hole, and we can just fly around now more around the Pantheon, was left mostly for structural reason. They knew that there was a weight pulling down the structure as you go higher and higher and further from the parts where the monument is basically anchored. Of course, the forces pull down, and this is a vectorial force, so it gets multiplied by the height and the distance and the weight. So, as you get higher, it gets to a point when the material breaks. So to avoid that, they had to take a number of measures. And first of all, the dome outside looks smaller than the inside. This is because there is the last part from this frame here to the top that basically is a kind of containing part to prevent the dome to basically open on the sides at the bottom. And then as you go up, the dome gets thinner and thinner and lighter, built with lighter and lighter materials. So it goes thinner up to probably just under a meter or around a meter of thickness. And the dome was covered with bronze, gilded bronze, so it looked like gold in the past. In the 4th century, the Emperor Augustus II stripped off all the roof in order to reuse it. You can see into the hole now, and basically left the dome unprotected. Likely in the 7th century, then when it was given to the church, the bronze covering was replaced with lead, which is now still there. The lead covering has been replaced and restored and refurbished several times. And now visitors are not allowed to the dome. I myself have been up there a few times. You can see it's covered with, of course, birds, poop, and few other things, but the view from there is really amazing. It's really, really impressive. Now we're actually going inside from the top. It looks like this is how it feels being a seagull. There's even a seagull down there. It's the kingdom of the seagulls now, as you can see. Looks like a Jackson Pollock painting, an action painting on the side, and you could see the ceiling. So it's 43 meters high from here, and there was a restoration that was done about 12 years ago of the dome, a giant scaffolding that was turning every few weeks to allow to reach the ceiling. I have been able also to go on that scaffolding for a few times. It was really, really, really impressive. You see how small the people are in the center, and you can see how perfect is the pattern. At the center, there's a big round part in porphyry with holes and drainage as well. The drainage was built there of the original Pantheon, so it did rain also back in the Roman times. There's a lot of people insisting that it doesn't rain inside, but it does. I can assure you. And it's only that because of how the light hits the rain, you might not see it at some point, and because of the hot air tends to go up, the water gets somehow like in an engine, it gets basically pulverized a little bit, but it's still the same. There are people who are allowed to go on the ceiling. I just lost the original, on the roof once a year, and they are the fire brigades. So, as I said, the Pantheon is a church, was transformed into a church. It's still today a working church, although it's owned by the Italian government, but it's still serviced by a church. They have a service every Sunday, and they have also main service. And also, they have recreated about 20 years ago some traditions that were done in the Middle Ages. One of them was to bring down the statue bring up the statue of the Virgin Mary, August 15, which is the Ascension Day, where the Virgin Mary statue was ascending from the keyhole, which was the church was dedicated to the Virgin Mary and all the marches. So, and also there's another celebration that you could see here during the Pentecost. So it happens in June, where they throw thousands and thousands of rose petals through the hole, symbolizing basically the descent of the Holy Ghost, the Pentecost, on the disciples. So after the 40 days after the resurrection of the Christ, the Holy Ghost descended upon the disciples and the Virgin Mary, allowed them to speak every language and to basically reach every corner of the world to annunciate the gospel. Now, this is the fire brigades, which are now in charge of going up there and bringing down the several packs of rose petals. Now, this tradition was stopped for probably over 100 years or more, from at least the 19th century. And in the late 1990s or beginning of 2000, there was Monsignor Tedesco, which was originally from Giffoni Vallepiana, who was the father in charge. This is the staircase that goes actually on the dome. And this is actually the dome. You can see an amazing view there. And of course, you must not be afraid of heights because there's no parapet, no nothing. And this is, you see how wide, how big is the keyhole. There's the hole at the top of the oculus. And then you can see that they just have these petals. The petals are provided by the birthplace of Monsignor Tedesco, which is the Giffoni Vallepiana, beautiful place in Campania. It's just about an hour southern of Naples. It's a lovely place. They also have a film festival there. And so you can see these guys once a year, they go up there and they do that. Of course, might be a while before they were able to do it again, but it's a very beautiful thing. This is just an interview. It's very beautiful. This being there, I've been to maybe 6 or 7 of them. It's really beautiful. It's a bit crowded, so you need to get there early, but it's really a beautiful effect. It's a beautiful thing. Let's see a little bit more of the history of the monument. First of all, as I said, the monument is designed according to a precise mathematical proportion. You can see the basically the sezione aurea, as we say in Italian, basically the golden proportion being used in order to design the entire place. There are a number of questions about the fact that has basically the timpano. He has a double one here, so basically the structural part of the design of the pronaos has this kind of repetition. But this, it all makes sense if you look at it not in the functional space, but in the sense of the symbolism and the basically the proportion of the building. You know that it's very precise, and you can see also the length and the size. This is really a phenomenal building, which is really the key to understanding what architecture was for the Romans. And here you can see, we don't really know how they built the dome. Of course, the dome was a concrete cast that was made on place using cranes and other materials. We know that the concrete and the walls, they have made of different materials using bricks and different type of cements. But as you go on the top, the dome gets lighter and lighter. They probably use a giant scaffolding, not like this one, but maybe probably a different one. But they did use a kind of molding principle. And then you can see that inside the dome, the different materials, from the tufa to the bricks, and then on the very top, the pumice. Pumice is a stone that is so light that even floats on water. It's also usually used in the baths as a scrub. I mean, we still use it nowadays. So basically, it was the filling that could basically sustain this movement that tended to collapse. Of course, with the Middle Ages, the Pantheon that was still being used as a church for all these centuries started more or less to be abandoned. There were buildings built. The constant floods of the river and other damages basically made the level of the streets rising, bearing the podium, the steps on top the Pantheon was built. So back in the Roman times, it was higher than the street level than it is nowadays. Nowadays, it's a little below the street level. We have to walk down a little bit in order to enter it. And a bell tower was built that was then replaced in the 17th century by Gian Lorenzo Bernini with two little bell towers on the side. It was only in the 19th century then they started, at the beginning of the 19th century, to free the Pantheon from the other buildings and the houses. At some point in the Middle Age, there were even people living underneath the prono. You could see in this picture on the left, the house is right next to it. So it was not isolated. It was only in the 19th century that they basically isolated the building from all the surroundings. This is the giant door, which is also a masterpiece. It's one of the only 3 sets of Roman doors known to have survived since the Roman times. The first one is the one of the Curia in the Roman Forum, which is now, it was moved in the Renaissance to be used as the doors of the Basilica of St. John's in Rome, St. John in Lateran. And the other set are, again, in the Roman Forum, as the so-called Temple of Romulus, right on the Via Sacra, right in the center of the Roman Forum. And the other one is the one of the Pantheon, which is possibly dating back to the Augustan age, because it doesn't perfectly match the size of the door. It has it's been reframed in order to fit here. So anyway, it's Roman bronze. It gets open and closed daily by only about 2 people are basically enough to, or one strong man is enough to open and close it. So you could see each one of these doors is about 7.5 tons. Now there's an interesting story about the door, because the Romans mostly used the right door. So the right door was a lot more worn out than the left one. Now these doors are so heavy that they don't have inches. They are basically supported by a kind of a giant metal ball that turns and wears out the support, which is another giant part that is made, concave in order to receive it, like a ballpoint pen. With another part on which it can turn, and is locked at the top and the bottom. It doesn't have inches on the side, because with that weight, no inch could be strong enough to support it. It would have broke, and so there's no inch there. It was damaged since the Middle Ages at some point, so it wasn't used. In the 18th century, they tried to open it. It fell down and it smashed the workers and the architects. So for centuries, it was not open. It was only in 1997 that the architect, Giovanni Belardi, at the time he was the director, and for many years it was my boss. So it was really an important figure. And most of the things I know about the Pantheon is because of following his lessons and his teaching, and whenever he spoke about it, was one of the most passionate men in about the Pantheon. And he was able overnight, with the team of engineers, to replace that mechanism after he understood how it worked, by simply keeping the thing in place, lifting it up with some hydraulics pumps, and then changing the part that was worn out. It couldn't work anymore, and then the doors have been working ever since. I think there should be a marble plaque or something to celebrate this fact, but unfortunately there's little mansions. This is something that most people don't know, but this is happened to the responsibility of one man who decided to, restore the door after hundreds of years. When you enter the Pantheon, if you look at the floor, there's one part of the floor that is worn out on the right side more than the other, because for centuries they can only use the left door. The right door didn't move, and always been doing so for over the last 20 years. And the Pantheon is also a tomb. There are the tombs of the kings of Italy, Umberto and Victor Emmanuel, and also here. Let's see a little bit of crowds. Since most people, we always complain about crowds and over tourists where we travel. I bet people won't be complaining now for a while about that. So this is the tomb of Victor Emmanuel II, Padre della Patria, the father of the country, who was the one who brought Italy together in between 1860 and 1870. And this is the main altar. Now, the altar inside the marbles, most of them have been replaced. The columns are still the original ones, but these were of a different color originally. The columns were white, and they were of a marble called Pavonazzetto. They were dyed, they were colored at some point to be of this sort of kind of pinkish. So that's not the natural color of the marble. The altar has been redone in the 18th century, as well as the attic, this part here. Originally, the decoration would have been more like this, with this more red and green, more Roman kind of colors. This is the 18th century design that was made by an architect called Paolo Hause, who reinvented, recreated, as well as the altar that was made as well in the 18th century with the papal symbols pretty much everywhere. The Pantheon was used as a tomb starting from the Middle Ages. There are older tombs, and in the Renaissance as well was used as a tomb. It became a popular place where to bury artists, and the most famous of them that was mentioned before by Dan Brown is, of course, Raphael, which is buried here in this shrine, which has a statue, the Madonna del Sasso, made by Lorenzetto. This is Raphael bust. He died in 1520, aged 37. He was a handsome man, tall, very successful professionally, also with women. As Giorgio Vasari said, probably too much. And Vasari is this artist and architect and historian of the 1500s who wrote this account with lives of hundreds of painters and artists and architects of starting from the 1200s till the 1500s. The last one is Michelangelo, who he considered the greatest of them all. And when he speaks about it gives some gossip, but not much. It never speaks about sexual aspects, sexual life of the artist, of course. But he speaks about the sexual life of Raphael, and he makes sure that we know that he's a womanizer, that he had plenty of women, too many, to a point that eventually killed him. This is, of course, the opinion of Vasari. Anyway, the bust was made in the 19th century, as well as the tomb. The tomb was there already in the 1520. It was opened in 1833, in the 350 years anniversary of Raphael's birth, and this marble coffin was then created. It was a Roman coffin that was given, on which is an inscription which was dictated when Raphael died by the Cardinal Bembo, which was a very important humanist and Renaissance man, a very cultivated man, who befriended most of the artists of the Renaissance. And it says, Illeces Raphael timuit quos hospite vinci, rerum magna parens et moriente mori. You can see the description here, and I believe everybody speaks Latin. So it's also said Ossa Incineres and Raphael Sancti Urbinati. So these two lines that I just read, Illeces Raphael, it means here lies that Raphael, by which even the great mother of things, which is the nature, believed to be defeated, because Raphael was such a great creator of beauty. And when et moriente mori, and when he died, to die also together with her. This is a beautiful Latin. It's very beautifully written. Anyway, when they opened, they found the bones and the remains. They also made a copy of his hand, whatever was left of it, and so they made sure that it was him. The doves and the other parts, they were a more recent donation. To complete the tomb, Pietro Lorenzetto, which was an artist, friend of Raphael, who had worked also with Raphael in the Cappella Chigi, in two of the statues of the chapel by Lorenzetto, made also this beautiful Virgin Mary for the tomb of Raphael. The there are several other artists, of course. There's a congregation of artists I'll be speaking about shortly. And actually, if we look at this, let me just go back here. So if we look at underneath the pronoun of the Pantheon, which is right here. So this is the giant columns here. This is the ceiling, and on the left right here there's a door that goes into the steps that the firemen climb to get to the dome. Halfway up there's a number of rooms. These rooms are in the use of this pontifical academy, Pontificia Insigne Accademia di Belle Arti e Lettere dei Virtuosi del Pantheon. In the 16th century, a father called Giovanni Terrasanta bought back a box of land, of dirt from the Holy Land, and created a congregation there at the Pantheon, which then became a sort of a congregation of artists. So because St. Joseph was basically a joiner, was basically an artisan, then all the artists, as kind of very skilled intellectual artisans, they basically created this. And this was the very first of its kind that allowed artists from different association, different means to be together for the first time. Now, in the Pantheon building, this academy which create prizes, and in the 17th century they had the exhibitions in the pronoun. They made a kind of display of art, like in the in the Temple of the Muses in ancient Athens, so in ancient Greek times. This idea that the artists could become the best if they compete with each other. So if you walk through these steps, you arrived here. There's a door which is always locked. I myself, I worked there nearly a decade. I've only been in there twice physically because it's closed and the academia doesn't let anyone in. So this is a very special occasion. Thanks to the academia, we have this digital model that you can actually see. The artists were basically the greatest architects, painters, musicians, sculpture, that they were appointed to be part of that. The academia is still existing. There are several artists and musicians that are part of it. The main offices are now by the Vatican. They also have a small collection there, but most of the historical museums is being left in these rooms. We are right basically inside the pronoun of the Pantheon. We are inside the walls of the Pantheon. This is one of the very many rooms that there. There's also a chapel that they have in the different part, a full-side chapel, and some of these rooms even have a window that looks inside of the Colosseum, at least two of them. And you can see here, this is the bust of Pietro Tenerani, one of the followers of Antonio Canova, neoclassicist artist. Most of the artifacts that you see here, they're actually 18th, 19th century. And we could see one thing that the artists had to do in order to give entering the academia was to give a sample of their art, whether it was a portrait of a small painting, a religious painting. These are mostly, as I said, 18th, 19th century. So they're most recent, but they're very, very beautiful by many artists who work there. I show you a couple, of course, mostly neoclassical, and there is Valadier. It's over there, down there. So basically, let me go just down here. No, sorry, this is where we came from. This you can see, these are the original Roman bricks. This is the original apse. And we can get here. So this is the number of popes. This at the top is Giovanni Terrasanta, is the founding father of the academy and the congregation. There is an altar dedicated to them. And then there's all the popes that were basically supporting Paul III, which was the one that first gave the permission for this academy to be established. And then, of course, there's this is the chairs that would have been used during their meetings. And of course, there are some of these artists, they are wearing this one here, for example, this paint de Paris. Most of them are minor Roman artists. They had a uniform. This outfit is actually the official uniform that they had as member of that academy, that they wore in the official meetings and function. And up here, this guy here is Giuseppe Valadier. Is the artist who designed Piazza del Popolo. He was a member of the Accademia. He lived in Rome a long time and he worked. His father was a watchmaker. So, and Valadier was designed the square. This is actually with the project of the Piazza del Popolo and the Trident here that you could see underneath. So it's one of the most notable ones. It's here. There's several others, but they're mostly this one. And then of course, it's an amazing place. Of course, there's a number. These are all plasters and models and bas reliefs, and you see more portraits going down this to the basically 19th century. And in the other room down here, there is, of course, a bust of Raphael. Now, the Pantheon at some point got filled with busts of different artists and people, but they were eventually all moved to the Protomoteca Capitolina because at some point they were too much, and they wanted to bring it back in the 19th century to the original bare Roman structure. So they left, of course, they left the altars, but when, for example, in 19th century, the Pantheon was used for the tombs of the kings, a couple of chapels were dismantled. Now, there is another museum which is on the opposite side of the Pantheon. It's right at the back. If we get, let me just get to the map look. There we are. As we saw before, there were the thermal baths of Agrippa right at the back, and there is still a construction here which is known as the Basilica of Neptune, and the baths of Agrippa would have been in this area here. So there's still, and there's basically the sacristy. So this is how it looks from the outside now. This is the back side of the Pantheon, but inside this part here, where there's windows here, there's the sacristy which is used, and on the top floor, right here, inside there is an antiquarium. There's another museum with few rooms with all the fragments and the history of the museum, mostly parts of the chapels that have been dismantled in the 19th century, other fragments. There's also a crack that goes from one side to another and splits the Pantheon in half. Of course, he hasn't moved or changed much since then, but he could have. Another thing that is very peculiar, I don't have it here, but I need to just go back to the Pantheon. Thank you. It's the fact that the prono here, it had basically, if we can drop in like this, let's drop in now. Yes, if you look at the ceiling now, there's just bare beams which were replaced in the 19th century or even before. But sorry, we just come back. But they were covered with metal. There was a metal, a bronze, and some elements of also gold and silver that covered this part here of the beams of the roof covering here. So there was a kind of a metal ceiling here with several tons. This was stripped off. Now, this is the Pantheon after Gian Lorenzo Bernini built the two bell towers called Orecchie d'Asino, donkey ears, because they will look like that. And also there was a gate that basically sealed and protected the prono of the Pantheon from, squatters, beggars, and so others. Those original ones were replaced, and then eventually in the original, they were Middle Age ones, Renaissance ones. In the they were put there after the Pantheon was actually isolated. They were basically melted during World War I and World War II in order to give the metal to the country. So basically they were stripped off, the metal was reused and never to be replaced. There was a project about 20 years ago to replace them, and the Pope who ordered to strip off those beams in the prono, in the portico, was Urban VIII that we see here, the Pope Barberini. And Gian Lorenzo Bernini was asked to strip off the bronze in order to use that bronze in the altar of St. Peter. Now, if you look at the entrance, when you enter, if you look at the entrance up on both sides, there's the coat of arms with the Barberini family. And there's also these inscriptions that tell the story how the bronze was taken away from the temple of the pagan gods, although it was been a church for longer than it has been a pagan temple now. Even then, it was, after 1,000 years being a church and only pagan temple for 400 years, but it's always a pagan temple because it was built as one. It was basically stripped off of the pagan temple, the bronze, and used to create the altar of St. Peter's Basilica, the large bronze canopy which stands at the center of the Basilica of St. Peter. Was done by Lorenzo Bernini around 1630. Well, Bernini, when he saw that ancient marble, he said, I can't use this one because I don't know the leak, how this bronze will behave. And so basically that wasn't used for the purpose. It was used to cast cannons. So it never got to the Vatican, actually. But the story, as I said, storytelling is really fundamental in history. The politicians and kings and popes and queens have always been very good in telling the story that people can believe in. So the story is written there in marble, so people believe, oh, that was actually not too bad. But the Roman people didn't really like the fact that such an ancient Roman monument, of which they were very proud and so well preserved, was stripped off of its bronze and its dignity at some point. So they complained by creating a pasquinata, which was a kind of a satirical component, in which they said, quod non fecerunt barbari, fecerunt barberini. What the barbarians didn't do, because they spared the Pantheon. Apparently, when Alaricus, with the barbarians in the 5th century, looted Rome, they were so overwhelmed with the beauty and the greatness of the Pantheon that they decided to spare it and to leave it as it was. So it was left untouched. But of course, not later on. The church didn't really think twice before stripping it off of the bronze. And so what the barbarians didn't do, the Barberini did, playing on the similar sound of the name of the popes and the barbarians. The altar, inside there are 2 tombs. They are besides the many others of the artists and also other people which are buried there before. There's several tombs, although they're hidden in different chapels. There's also the tomb of King Victor Emmanuel, which was buried there in 1878, and his son Umberto I. Umberto was the king that was shot in 1900 by an anarchist in Monza near Milan, and it was a very difficult times for Italy at that time. Let me just go back on the Pantheon so we can back. Okay, so we can actually use the pictures again. And there is a story about the king and the queen Margherita going and visiting Naples, and a pizza man called Brandi was supposed to be the chef. His name was Esposito, was supposed to be the official provider of pizzas to the king and queen. It wasn't the first king who had pizza. Was a street food in Naples since the 1700s, but then the king of Naples apparently was the first one who tried this pizza and loved it, Ferdinand IV. And then also the king of Italy, the Umberto and his wife, wanted to try the pizza, and they have an official pizza maker that was then awarded with the king seal. And then the tomb of Queen Margherita is right underneath the tomb of King Umberto. And then basically they believe that the name of the pizza Margherita was actually came after the name of the queen. And in fact, the pizza Margherita has the colors of the Italian flag, so the red tomato sauce, the white, the mozzarella, and green, the basil. And then we can admire one last time the large beautiful dome. The dome has this 28 squares called lacunari on 5 different rows. There are 28 because 28 is the phases of the moon. So the ultimate meaning of the Pantheon, the ultimate symbol, is basically an allegory of the universe. Now, in Augustus' vision, and also in Hadrian's vision, if this was entirely designed by Hadrian, the idea was that there was an order in the universe. The Pantheon is a sort of macro reproduction of the universe, this large spherical giant building with the one opening that gives light to everything, so like the sun, and then 7 main chapels corresponding to the 7 main gods, 8 smaller ones. So all of this symbolize basically the universe that is as the Greek described this, a cosmos. Cosmos means order. So the universe obeys to laws and to an order that is needed to guarantee peace and prosperity and wealth. So politically, the message of the emperors was, you need to respect the natural order in order to be having peace and prosperity. And so the Pantheon is quintessentially a very political building, although it's a temple and a religious building. But in Roman times, religion and politics were pretty much the same thing. In fact, the emperor was also the Pontifex Maximus, was the head in chief of religion. And part of this also had migrated into the Catholic Church in the Middle Age and in the Renaissance, when the Pope was also a king and he pretty much loved his political power. So the ultimate meaning of the Pantheon is again one of the symbols of the Roman propaganda, of the Roman idea that only order, political order that reflects the natural order of things, can guarantee us stability and prosperity. Now, I have a last let me see. Yes, we can see a last reproduction, just dreaming again how the Pantheon would look like back in Roman times. And then if you have, I don't have the possibility here now to see the let me see if I can get the, I will be taking questions now if I see already there's some question there, so I'll be reading them, and then we can do a little bit of question time. If you are on Facebook, on YouTube, you can comment on the video, and I'll give you the answer. So again, these are the porticos nearby, and I would like to now get to the, let's just stop sharing the screen. Here we are. So basically you should be seeing just me now. Let me just check this. Let me see the different questions that we have. Is wheelchair friendly to visit? Let me just see here on the feed. Someone has asked, possibile italiano? No, italiano no. We'll do that in Italian maybe in a month or two. Okay, I'm seeing. It is, let me see that. Okay, I'm just trying to read the question now. Yes, I will. The link to the virtual tour of the Academia will be posted on the Facebook group. If you're following on YouTube, you can join the Facebook group, and we will send you by email if you have registered. The Pentecost. Somebody talking about the Gospels. I won't go down that path. Let me see. The other question is someone asking: is it wheelchair friendly? It is now. There's a ramp to get in, and inside is all flat. There's only one step, so it's one of the most friendly, wheelchair friendly monuments in Rome. Let me see if there are other questions. If you want to ask questions, you can ask here. In the meanwhile, I'll just show you. Let me share the screen again. There's a two-step screen sharing on this Restream platform. So usually these tours are done on Zoom. This is the first time I do them fully on Restream. That has a two steps system of sharing the screen. And so today we had seen that. Tomorrow at the same time I'll be doing on Zoom though, so it won't be on YouTube, it won't be on the Facebook. It's a paid tour that it will be done on Zoom, so you will get a Zoom link and you can join on Zoom. And this tours, because we have today we had over 300 bookings, I can't do them on Zoom because too many people. And then but the other one, so you are able to interact even with your video, with your camera. And then so it will be about the rooms of Raphael. Again, we're using the 3D pictures, the tour that's similar to the one we've seen inside the Pantheon, and of course the full history and the full description of the rooms of Raphael. And then the next weekend, Saturday 20, I'll be talking about Leonardo da Vinci. We'll see his the place where he died, the place where he was born, and of course some of his masterpieces and his life will be kind of a insightful visit of the masterpieces of Leonardo da Vinci. Then I will be talking about the Colosseum, the life and death of the gladiators. So we'll go inside the Colosseum. I'll be showing you some footage about the gladiators and the life, and we'll be going to see virtually the Colosseum entering inside, seeing also the undergrounds on that part. The week after, we will be talking about Pompeii, the buried lives. So how basically Pompeii, the history of Pompeii, we'll see some of the houses, some of the villas, the baths, the forum, and also most importantly, I'll try to reconnect with the lives and the people who lived and eventually died in Pompeii. And then the 28th of March about Michelangelo. So we'll see mostly his work as a sculpture, but also as a frescoes, and so some of his paintings. So a full portrait of really trying to answer to the question what Michelangelo really wanted to achieve in life, why he did everything that he did. Of course, the tours will go on then on in April and May. I'm planning now to do them all year round. In the summer, we're probably reducing them anyway. So I hope you enjoyed this tour about the Pantheon. A full edited video with also the beginning and everything will be available on YouTube for free shortly. So you'll be sent a link to the edited version, and then you will be able to share it to your friends. Please click following. If you don't have to pay anything, but if you of course want to add a tip or send a donation to support the Grand Tour and what we're doing, I really appreciate if you can do that. Please subscribe to the newsletters, share, do all the things that I'm not very good in the social sharing part. Please do that. I do have one last surprise, or one last one last part of it. We will be starting actually from the I'll be sharing now another video with a bit of music. I just need to I'll just replay one of those videos that will show entirely the okay. I'll just be playing it now. We'll just be flying over Rome. So I have a few more. There are some more questions here. I'll just be reading them now as they have arrived. So I'm just reading them now because they arrived just now. Replying to this one of the Gospels I can't find. The Pentecost, the Holy Ghost descends to the Virgin Mary Christ. The gospel is basically, when I said the gospel, I meant that they were announcing basically what, not the actual book of the gospel, but they were announcing the story of Christ and telling, the main, basically, the conduct of Christianity. I've been to the Pantheon too. I got a tour, but this gives. Oh, thank you very much. To the reason Raphael requested to be buried in the Pantheon. So Raphael in 1515, he was appointed head of the marbles. He was the one basically entrusted by the Pope Leo to be the one who guarded all the monuments and the antiquities, the marbles of Rome. So it was natural for him to be buried there. There is next to this tomb a marble plaque reminding of the fiancée. The fiancée was Maria Bibbiena. She was the niece of the Cardinal Bibbiena. And somehow Miss Raphael, as we said at the beginning, pretty much loved his life as, being single, enjoying women, companies, friends, and he had many girlfriends. Apparently, but he was in love with the daughter of a baker of Trastevere, as far as we know, and the so-called Fornarina that she was portrayed in a famous portrait. If she is the one, and this Maria Bibbiena died, yes, after Raphael postponed the marriage for 1 or 2 years. The entire story is told by Vasari as well, so it's in the lives by Vasari, so you can read it there. But it was more added to describe the character of someone who wanted to live free. I'm not really sure of the accuracy of that. Anyway, he was buried there mostly because of the connection with ancient word, and the Maria Bibbiena was then the inscription was then put next to the tomb afterwards. And you can read the full story. It says that the rightful marriage was prevented because she passed early. And then was the Pantheon altered much after it was built? It was one of the least modified buildings of the Roman times. So the Pantheon by Augustus was probably different in the shape, and some people even presumes it was square, but this is it's debated, so it's a very specific discussion. But after the fall of the Roman Empire, except from the altars and that part there, most of it, it's even the floor is 80% of the floor is original floor with original marbles, and been restored and refurbished, but it's still the original one. So it's really, most of it still looks like it was when it was built. Grazie mille. And then thank you very much. Please keep following. How much in today's money did it cost to build? Well, I'd say there was one thing. If they build that today, it will cost probably a lot more, because all the health and safety and the the unions and all that kind of stuff comes, and also politicians that have to make money on top of everything. So it will probably proportionally will cost a lot more. But I don't have a figure. I've never read it anywhere. So, but it was basically a really important task. Probably the benefit was much higher than the cost. Let's put it in this term. The Romans were very aware of the importance of basically representing their own ideology, the propaganda of the emperor, through buildings, and he certainly did it beautifully. Thank you very much. Is there any more questions? I think we got them all. Let's see somewhere else, because they are different parts. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm going to disconnect now. And again, keep in touch. You will be receiving as well a voucher for a discount if you want to buy some of the tours in the next coming days. You can also buy a package of four tours for 40 euros. And thanks to these virtual tours, basically, I've been able to keep the company going, and we will get back as soon as things get better. Hopefully by the summer we'll be able to work and tour again. I want to do a special thanks to Valentina that helped me to figure out the problem with the video. Okay, so thank you very much. Buonanotte.